They circle you like vultures, waiting for the crack in your composure. The weakness. The scream. The slip. Because to them, your chaos is currency. Your rage feeds their illusion of control. But you are not theirs to provoke. You are not some wild flame they will not get the satisfaction of watching you burn. You are the storm that never shouts. The quake beneath calm soil. You do not flinch. You do not explain. You let them talk, while you build. While you sharpen. While you turn every wound into itch. Every betrayal into steel. Their words echo in the silence you own, and the silence becomes a noose they tied themselves. Let them think they've won. Let them mistake your quiet for defeat. Because when the time comes, and it will, you won't need to scream to be felt. You won't need to strike to be feared. You'll rise, unreadable and unshakable, and in your stillness, they will see the reflection of their irrelevance. Your scars are not their trophies. They are proof that pain met you and failed to finish you. That pressure came, and instead of cracking, you turned into something untouchable. You do not owe the world your fury. Let them choke on your indifference. Walk away not because you're broken, but because they were never worth the war. You are not the echo of their chaos. You are the silence that buries it. They think they've got you figured out, don't they? They study every flicker in your eyes, every stutter in your breath, waiting for the slip, waiting for you to become the monster they can point their shaking fingers at and say, "See? I told you." That's the game. They bait the wound. They poke the bruise that hasn't healed. Because they know something you haven't fully admitted to yourself yet. Your rage isn't chaos. It's fire. And fire, when out of control, scorches everything, even you. So they test you. They whisper behind your back loud enough for you to hear. They smile while twisting the knife in your side. They push every boundary, cross every line, desecrate every piece of peace you try to build. They poke the lion, convinced it's in a cage. What they don't realize is that it's not the roar that makes the lion dangerous, it's the silence before the pounce. And you've learned, through blood and betrayal, that silence is a blade. Silent fury is the kind that can't be disarmed. You used to take the bait. Let them wind you up, send you spiraling, caught between the need to defend your name and the burning ache to make them feel your pain. You used to think silence meant weakness, that if you didn't respond, they'd win. That if you didn't strike back, they'd walk away thinking they mattered more. But now you know better. Now you've learned that a reaction is a gift. And some people are not worthy of what you give. So you stop. You listen, but you don't absorb. You watch, but you don't flinch. Let them perform. Let them exhaust themselves, believing they're chipping away at something fragile. What they'll come to realize too late is that your calm is calculated. That your stillness is not surrender. It's the gathering of power, the slow inhale before the reckoning. They'll mistake your silence for submission. That's the trap you lay. Because while they run their mouths, you sharpen your edges. While they hurl their poison, you learn to transmute it. While they're busy building their narrative, you're building endurance. You're not just surviving. You're evolving in the shadows. Your silence isn't just absence, it's declaration. It says, I see you. I see exactly what you're doing. And I've decided you are not even worth the ashes after the fire. That restraint, that refusal to dance for their amusement, that's power. That's a power they can't understand because their identity requires attention. Without your response, they unravel. They scream louder. They push harder. They make fools of themselves, dancing alone in the spotlight they lit to destroy you. And you sit in the dark, untouched, unshaken, learning the music of their madness until you know it better than they do. You let them underestimate you. Let them write you off as broken, as defeated. That's fine. Let them talk. Let them cling to their version of you, because while they're holding onto a ghost, you are becoming something they cannot fathom. They feast on your rage. Starve them. Let them hunger until their own emptiness devours them. And when that silence has done its work, when you have become the blade, not just held it, then comes the moment they realize they never had power over you. They only had noise. And noise fades. Echoes die. But silence, it echoes in the soul long after the room is empty. Your silence becomes their mirror. Every insecurity, every cruelty, every manipulation they've hurled now are reflected back with nowhere to run. No distraction. No justification. Just their own reflection staring back, hollow and irrelevant. And you walk away. With your fire intact. Your dignity armored. Your name clean, not because you screamed for it, but because you never gave it away to begin with. Now breathe. The war is far from over, and the next battlefield is carved from the bones of your restraint. The silence has spoken. But what comes next? That's when they'll learn what power truly sounds like, when it finally chooses to speak. They will say silence is cowardice. That silence is running. That silence means they've won. And they will say it again and again, louder each time, because they are desperate for the sound of their words reshaping the world around them. But the truth is far colder than they are willing to face. Silence is not surrender, it is domination. It is the raw, unblinking defiance of someone who knows that their stillness screams louder than any word ever could. Because words can be caught, twisted, poisoned. They can be flung back at you with venom, rephrased until your truth is unrecognizable. They take your fire, reshape it into a weapon meant to burn you alive. And they smile while doing it, convinced they bested you in battle. But silence is untouchable. It is smoke through fingers. It cannot be rephrased, cannot be distorted. It simply is a wall too high for them to climb, a void too deep for them to echo through. They speak, shout, scream, searching for the moment your silence falters. But it doesn't. You give them nothing. You keep your eyes on them, unwavering, while inside you forge steel from every word they throw. And the longer you remain silent, the more they flail. They start to question. Doubt seeps in. They wonder if you are broken, or worse, indifferent. Because to them, irrelevance is a death sentence. To be ignored is worse than defeat. So they dig deeper. They turn crueler. But with each assault, you grow more still. Not weaker, stronger. More deliberate. More focused. Silence is your weapon, and you wield it with surgical precision. You let them bury themselves in their own noise. Watch them build their own gallows out of their desperation to be heard. Their accusations become confessions. Their cruelty becomes exposure. And all the while, you say nothing. Because silence doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you've chosen not to bleed in front of them. It means you're rebuilding behind walls they will never scale. It means you are crafting something within something vast and terrible and unstoppable. And when you finally decide to speak, if you ever do, it won't be in defense. It won't be in rage. It will be final, absolute, undeniable. But maybe you won't speak. Maybe you'll let them live with the echo of their own unraveling. Let them walk in a world where their voice no longer holds power, where their words fall like stones into a bottomless void and disappear. That is what silence does, it renders them invisible. Powerless. It turns the tormentor into a ghost, screaming into a mirror that no longer reflects. You hold that power, not by chance, not by luck, but by choice. Because you've learned that to react is to give away your energy. And your energy is sacred. Your mind is a fortress. Your peace is not a battlefield. So let them speak. Let them scream. You keep building your empire brick by brick in silence. And as they crumble into the dust of their own irrelevance, you rise not with fanfare, not with noise, but with purpose. With certainty. With the kind of strength that never needed permission to exist. Because they still don't realize. They never had the power to destroy you. Only to distract you. And now they've lost even that. They think pain is the end game. That if they can cut you deep enough, drag you low enough, you'll stay broken. That your silence is surrender. That your stillness means you've shattered under the weight. But they misunderstand you on the most fundamental level because they think pain breaks you, when in reality, it awakens you. Pain is not the enemy. It is the forge. It is the unrelenting fire that melts away everything that is not essential, revealing the weapon buried within. And you are that weapon. They think they can feed on your destruction, that your suffering is some kind of twisted entertainment. They want to witness you unravel, to see your tears, to watch you bleed and confirm that they held power over you. That they got inside. That they reached the parts of you that still felt. But what they don't know is that pain doesn't mean they've won. Pain means you've endured. And endurance. That's where greatness begins. You don't run from the pain. You welcome it. You look it dead in the eye and let it teach you. Let it scrape away the softness, the naivete, the illusion that the world owes you kindness. Let it show you just how far you can fall and still claw your way back, bloodied but standing. Pain becomes your curriculum. Every betrayal a lesson. Every scar a degree in survival. But you don't perform it. You don't give them the satisfaction of watching you crawl. You bury the screams deep in your chest and turn them into fuel. Let the world see you're calm. Let them believe you're unfazed. Meanwhile, inside, you're building a fortress. Stone by stone, brick by excruciating brick. You let the pain carve muscle into your resilience. Let it teach you how to stand when everything is trying to force you down. They want your pain to be your downfall. Let it be your uprising instead. Don't share the wound. Share only the wisdom it gave you. Don't show them your scars in mourning, show them in silence, in the way you walk through fire now without flinching. That's what they fear most. Not your tears, not your anger, but your quiet, unshakable strength. The strength to walk through hell and come out unrecognizable, not because you were destroyed, but because you were reborn. Keep your transformation sacred. Keep the process hidden. The cocoon is not for their eyes. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep assuming. Meanwhile, you evolve into something they can't label. Something they can't cage or manipulate. They will look for the cracks where pain once lived and find only steel. Find only sharp edges and silence they can't dissect. You are not defined by what hurt you. You are defined by what you do with that hurt. You become the master of it, the architect of your own ascension. So keep walking. Chin up. Eyes forward. Let them talk. Let them mock what they can't comprehend. Let them believe you're still the version of you that felt the blade, not the one who became the blade. Let them learn too late that the silence wasn't retreat. It was evolution. And the deeper the pain, the sharper the weapon you've become. Now keep moving, because what follows is the pressure they think will break you. And you're about to show them what kind of masterpiece that pressure creates. They thought the pressure would be your undoing. That if they applied enough weight, enough shame, rejection, betrayal, silence, you'd collapse under it. You'd crack like glass beneath a boot, scatter into shards so small there'd be nothing left to piece together. That was the plan. To drown you in expectations and failure. To suffocate you beneath doubt. And when you gasped for air, that breathless desperation would be their proof that you were never strong enough to begin with. But they were wrong. So wrong. Because pressure doesn't just crush, it clarifies. It strips away the excess. It burns through illusion. And what's left after the fire is not ashes. It's not ruin. It's a diamond. Unyielding. Unmatched. Unbreakable. You didn't buckle. You transformed. They couldn't see it happening, not at first. Because refinement doesn't scream. It doesn't ask for applause. It happens deep, in the furnace of your silence, In the quiet hours when no one's watching but the darkness itself. They thought your stillness meant surrender. They didn't realize you were surviving the crucible. That every second under pressure was shaping something more permanent than pain, more dangerous than fury. Clarity, focus, purity of purpose. The world tried to sand you down, wear you out. Every loss, every lie, every broken promise, they weren't obstacles. They were catalysts. Refinement is violent. Becoming unbreakable doesn't come gently. You had to be shattered first. Had to feel the weight of everything collapsing, just to learn the sound of your soul rebuilding in silence. And in that silence, you learn something that few ever understand. There's no strength in pretending it doesn't hurt. The strength is in not needing to prove that it does. There's power in not performing your pain. In letting pressure push you so far into yourself that all that's left is the truth. Not the narrative they gave you. Not the one you used to chase. But your truth. The one that says you are the storm. The heat. The force that doesn't flicker in the wind, it becomes the wind. And when you walked through that fire, when you endured what was meant to unmake you, you came out cold. Clean. No longer reacting. No longer explaining. Just existing, brilliant and sharp and terrifying in your stillness. That's what diamonds do. They don't ask for validation. They exist beyond opinion. Beyond worth measured by someone else's voice. The pressure taught you that. It showed you the difference between those who fold and those who forge. Between those who curse the fire and those who become it. Let them keep pressing. Let them keep stacking weight on your shoulders, hoping this one will be too much. Because they haven't realized you're past the breaking point. That threshold. You crossed it long ago. Now, the pressure feeds you, trains you, reminds you of exactly who you've become. You wear your silence like armor. Your scars like scripture. Your presence like a truth no one can deny, even when they pretend not to notice. And they do notice. Even when they won't say it. Even when they smile and pretend your power doesn't rattle something primal in them, they see it. They feel it. Because they were never meant to survive what you have. And that terrifies them. You didn't bend. You didn't break. You crystallized into something they can't even touch without bleeding. So now, walk. No apology. No explanation. Let them watch. And if they still think the pressure was meant to destroy you, let them wait for the silence that comes next. Because now it's time for them to learn what it means to scream into stone. And you're not done yet. There's still one truth left to burn into the ruins. Now comes the moment they thought they'd never face. You leaving it all behind, and never looking back. They want you to stay in the chaos because they don't know how to exist without it. Conflict is their comfort, and you've been their anchor, unwilling, unknowing, maybe even unwilling to accept how long they've been pulling you into wars you never asked to fight. They thrive on dragging you back into the noise because, in the noise, they matter. In the noise, they can spin lies into truth, twist blame into defense, perform outrage, and call it reality. They don't want resolution. They want performance. They want you to scream back, match their fury, give them something to grip onto. Because when you answer, they can write the script. When you react, they can say, "See, you're just as bad." But what happens when you refuse the stage? When you fold your arms, look into the flames and walk? They crumble. Because silence is power, but walking away is liberation. It's the moment the puppet cuts its own strings and says, "No more." They will call it weakness, cowardice, betrayal. Because they need the story to paint you as the villain for leaving. It makes it easier to not look inward. But the truth, you walked away not because you were afraid, but because you were done being consumed. Done being used. Done being baited into battles that drained your soul dry. And when you leave, don't just step back. Walk through the storm with your head high. Not looking over your shoulder. Not leaving a door cracked open. Leave so thoroughly that your absence becomes a silence they cannot spin, cannot shout over. Leave with the kind of peace that haunts them because nothing echoes louder in their mind than your disinterest. Nothing dismantles their power faster than the realization that you just don't care anymore. Let them talk. Let them scream into their echo chamber. Let their voice bounce off the walls with no reply. The stage is empty now, and they're dancing alone. Their words lose gravity without your attention. Their drama dies in the vacuum of your exit. You've outgrown the war. You've outgrown the version of you who kept going back, hoping this time it would be different. It won't. Because they don't want healing, they want chaos. They don't want connection, they want control. And once you see that, really see it, walking away becomes survival. It becomes power. It becomes a declaration, "I choose me." That's what they'll never understand. They think power is in being heard, but you know now, power is in not needing to be. You don't need to defend your choices. You don't need their permission. You don't owe anyone your energy, your peace, your presence. Some people aren't looking for growth, they're looking for someone to burn with. And you've already risen from too many ashes to become someone else's kindling. So walk. Walk even when your body shakes and your heart aches and your mind whispers reasons to stay. Walk even when silence feels lonely and endings feel heavy. Because every step forward is a funeral for every time you let them pull you backwards. Every step forward is a vow that you will never again barter your peace for proximity. And what comes next? That's where everything changes. You've survived the silence, transformed through the pain, hardened under pressure. Now, freed from the battlefield, they'll say you disappeared. But they'll be wrong. You didn't disappear. You ascended. They whispered to you in the dark, didn't they? Those voices in your head that dressed up revenge as justice. That painted retribution in colors so vivid, it felt righteous. Like if you just showed them, if you just made them feel the pain they forced into you, you'd finally have peace. That if you tore them down, you'd rise. That if you ruined them, you'd be free. But that's the lie, isn't it? Because revenge isn't freedom. It's a leash. It keeps you tethered to the very thing that tried to break you. It turns your pain into a compass that always points backward. You begin living not for yourself, but for the fantasy of their downfall. Every step forward secretly looking over your shoulder. Every victory shadowed by the thought of them seeing it and choking on their regret. It's not growth. It's still servitude. Just dressed in steel and fury. They want you trapped there believing that vengeance is the finish line. That only when they're destroyed will you be whole. But that's the illusion. Because when you finally become strong enough, when you finally remember what it means to breathe without their poison in your lungs, you realize you've outgrown the war. You don't want to destroy them anymore. You want something infinitely more dangerous, to forget them entirely. That's the wound they can't recover from. Not your retaliation, but your irrelevance. Not your rage, but your indifference. That's when they truly disappear, when your life blooms so wide and far from their shadow, their name becomes dust in your throat. That's not forgiveness. That's not pity. That's ascendancy. Let them stumble through their days still searching for your reaction. Let them scroll through your silence like a graveyard, looking for signs of life they can infect. You've risen too high for their chaos to reach. You've shed the skin that once flinched at their voice. You've traded vengeance for vision. Your peace is no longer a weapon. It's the empire that stands where revenge once begged to be king. You don't need them to hurt. That's the old dream. What you need, what you've always needed, is to win in a way so colossal, so unapologetically whole, that it makes their attempts laughable in retrospect. Not because you crushed them, but because you stopped needing them in the first place. You became the kind of person who walks past the ashes without stopping. And that's the kind of power no one sees coming. Let them rot in the story where they're still the villain. You've moved on to a narrative where they don't exist, where only you remain. Sharp, silent, unshaken, and untouchable. They thought you were permanent. They thought no matter how many times they overlooked you, underestimated you, betrayed you, you'd still be there. Like furniture. Like background noise. Like something they could come back to when their world stopped spinning. But people only realize value once it's no longer within their grasp. Once the silence becomes deafening. Once the space you filled becomes a void that swallows them whole. But you didn't just walk away, you disappeared without a sound. You didn't give them the privilege of closure, the satisfaction of a goodbye. You just vanished. And in your absence, something miraculous happened. You evolved. You built yourself back from the ruin they thought they left you in. Piece by jagged piece, you reconstructed your soul, not just to survive but to thrive beyond anything they could envision. And the best part, you never needed to say a word. Because true regret doesn't come from confrontation. It festers in silence. It grows in the gaps between what they had and what they'll never touch again. While they were busy creating chaos, you were creating your empire. While they basked in temporary control, you became something eternal, untouchable, unknowable, unforgettable. Now they scroll through your life like an outsider peering into a world they can't enter. They see your glow, your growth, your grit, and they pretend it doesn't affect them. But it does. It hits in waves late at night, in quiet rooms, in their own moments of failure. That's when your absence becomes a scream. That's when your success becomes a curse they cast upon themselves without realizing it. You didn't win because you hurt them. You won because you no longer needed them to lose. You are no longer a name on their tongue. You are a ghost in their memory. A shadow cast by their own ignorance. Every time they try to reach for the version of you they remember, they're met with the realization that that person no longer exists. You outgrew the narrative. You left the stage. And now they're stuck in the story without a protagonist, just regret and echo and dust. This isn't revenge. This is evolution. And it's only the beginning. If you want, I can blend this entire series into a single unified, long-form piece for you, seamless in tone and flow. Just say the word. They only ever felt powerful when you danced to their rhythm. When your pulse quickened at their lies. When your voice cracked defending your truth. When your eyes burned with betrayal and your hands shook with fury. That's when they felt strong, because your reactions made them real. Their sense of control was never built on truth or strength. It was built on your fire, your confusion, your desperation to be understood. You were the battery powering their illusion. But when the reaction stopped, when your voice no longer rose, when your eyes stopped searching for meaning in their madness, that's when their world began to rot from the inside. Manipulators are cowards in disguise. They play chess with hearts they don't have the courage to feel. They twist meanings, warp context, always shifting the blame, always placing the burden onto the back of whoever loves the most. They count on your empathy. They thrive in your need for closure. They manipulate your desire to understand into a weapon used against you. But silence takes away all their tools. Silence confuses them. It removes the mirror they used to study your pain. When you stop reacting, they are left only with their reflection, and there is no mask strong enough to hide from that kind of isolation. They panic. Not because they miss you, but because without your reactions, they're invisible, powerless, forgotten. They built entire strategies around your emotions. Every play, every lie, every twist of the knife was calculated to provoke a response. It didn't matter if that response was heartbreak or rage. All that mattered was that you felt something for them. Because in your pain, they were important. In your reactions, they existed. But the day came when you saw through it. When the pattern finally revealed itself for what it was: a loop with no end, a test with no answer. And you did the only thing they never expected. You went silent. You didn't block them to punish, you erased them to breathe. You didn't stop arguing to spite them, you stopped because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't be twisted into a new narrative. You left the game, walked off the field, and suddenly, everything they built crumbled. Because they never had power over you, only over your reactions. Now they sit alone in the ruins, waiting for a storm that never comes, checking their phone for a rage-fueled message that never arrives, rehearsing arguments for an opponent who's already disappeared over the horizon. Their entire architecture collapses because you were the foundation and you left. They will try to bait you again. They will pretend to change. They'll whisper half apologies, half promises, half reasons why maybe you overreacted. But you've learned to read between lines now. You've learned that true apologies come with changed behavior, not better lies. And this time, you won't give them the one thing they're desperate for, because nothing breaks them faster than your silence. Because nothing leaves them emptier than the void they can't fill with manipulation. And nothing reminds them of what they truly are more than being forced to sit alone in the echo chamber of their own irrelevance. And now, the final ember dims. The war is over. The game is done. And you never even had to raise your voice. You just stopped letting them hear your heartbeat. If you'd like, I can now blend everything you've shared, every piece we've created into one singular, seamless long-form work. Unbroken, whole, eternal. Say the word. They've spent so long creating illusions, entire identities made of lies, projections, borrowed confidence, fake apologies. They shapeshift into whatever earns them control, affirmation, or escape. But underneath it all, there's something they feared more than your power, more than your silence, their own reflection. And the longer they run from it, the more it waits. Patient, eternal. A shadow that doesn't blink. But your silence, that's what finally drags them to the mirror. Because as long as you responded, they had somewhere to hide, somewhere to point the blame. Your reactions were their distraction from reality. They could twist it, manipulate it. But when that mirror becomes the only voice in the room, when your silence steals the script, they start to hear themselves. And they don't like what's playing. It starts slowly. At first, they scoff, laugh, dismiss. You're dramatic. You're sensitive. You're weak. But the silence doesn't flinch. It lingers. It echoes their words back with no distortion, no interruption, no defense they can use as a shield. Eventually, the voices they mocked you with become the noise they hear in their own heads. And suddenly the silence doesn't just expose them, it consumes them. That's when it happens. The unraveling. The beginning of the end. Because they don't know how to exist without someone else's chaos to feed on. Without your empathy to exploit. Without your pain to center themselves around. You were the mirror they used to feel whole, and now that it's gone, all that's left is the truth. raw, unfiltered, unavoidable. And the truth is this: they were never who they pretended to be. They pretended to be powerful. But real power doesn't need a reaction to survive. They pretended to be in control. But control rooted in deception is nothing but rot in disguise. They pretended to care. But caring doesn't cut others to feel alive. And now, standing alone, stripped of your energy, your light, your pain, they are faced with the vast nothingness of who they really are. And they can't run from it anymore. There's no new game, no fresh audience, no rewrite of the story. There is only the truth. That every scream, every manipulation, every cruel word was a reflection of their own self-loathing projected outward. You didn't destroy them. They handed themselves the match the moment they underestimated you. You simply refused to burn with them. And now their world collapses in silence. Slowly. Then suddenly, the mask cracks. The lies cave in. And the empire they built from the ruins of others finally demands payment. Not from you. From them. And you've moved on.